This limited Kintsugi Heroes podcast series was made possible through grant funding provided by the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice Connecting Seniors Grant Program. If you'd like to find out more about Kintsugi Heroes, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au. Welcome to our Kintsugi Heroes special series, Connecting Seniors, where we share the experiences of aging Australians to create connections across our communities. In this episode, John Milham had a chat with Ian Westmoreland, founder of Kintsugi Heroes and an inspiring advocate for our senior community. As an aging member himself, Ian offers a profound perspective on the untapped wisdom and skills that seniors possess, the importance of intergenerational connections, and his own journey from a life focused on financial success to one devoted to giving back, finding purpose, and leaving a lasting legacy for future generations. Now, let's get to the conversation.
Welcome back to our little podcast here, and of course, stories that matter, stories of resilience and hope. And today is a little bit different and maybe a little challenging. We'll see, because it's an interesting member of the community. I have to declare my conflict of interest, because today I am enormously excited and privileged to talk to the founder of Kintsugi Heroes, and obviously, my boss. But forgive me if I sound a little less challenging than usual. However, today, this is not about Ian, who is well practiced at telling us how he got to become such a an important person in creating organizations that support the community. But this is about Ian, the identity, the person where he is now, like of a certain age, a man of a certain age with a man of certain responsibilities and certain history that got him there. Because today we're talking to Ian as part of our Connecting to Seniors series. So welcome, Ian, who is now like a senior, right, as part of our cohort of interesting older Australians. So thank you, Ian, for joining us today.
G'day, John. I think thank you for the introduction. I'm not sure where it was going to go, and it's funny. I never even thought of myself for this series, because I struggle thinking of myself as a senior, but I'm well and truly there, age-wise.
Well, in terms of, we're really only as old as the commands we bark out at other people to keep up with us, right? But so in many ways, you're too busy to attend to this because you're so involved in so many other things. But it really is an important part of us understanding, right, that that's the stories are a consequence of life, mate, and you've lived a life, right? And where you've got to is about, means that you're a senior. And it's interesting that seniors has a connotation, right? So you haven't seen yourself as a senior. Well, how do you view, how do you see senior Australians?
It's a number of different ways. There's this huge, untapped, underutilized resource of wisdom and skills. And it's, in a way, it's a lose-lose at the moment. There's this huge potential that's untapped. And the mental and physical impact on those older people for being untapped is quite negative. And there was a great TV documentary where they matched some of these older people with young kids, the kindergarten kids, and then they measured the various aspects of the physical and mental health. There's suicide ideation, how long they could stand on one leg for, and things like that. And it increased enormously when they had this meaningful relationship with a young person. And I don't know what it is. Is it, I hear in the corporate world, sometimes there's too much grey, or there's a reluctance to recruit someone in that space. And I feel it's not a sensible decision. I guess I've been fortunate that I left paid work when I turned 60, but then started my own businesses, not-for-profit organisations. So I wasn't dependent on someone looking at how much hair I had in my case, or how much grey you've got, John, in your beard in your case.
Yeah.
So I see this untapped resource. I see a lot of challenges around the lack of connection and support, respect. Even you go to Japan, there's far more respect for elder citizens. You go to Europe, there's far more intergenerational stuff. My wife's Helen's father was Italian, and in the Italian community, often the seniors would live with the family, and there's a lot of negative trends, I guess, in Australia. But hopefully, we're doing something about that through this project that we're running.
Absolutely. So it's interesting that you talk about the negative trends. Where do you feel like age has changed your circumstances?
I'd like to say some cases I don't feel it has, but that's not been 100% truthful. But I'm still incredibly active physically. I ride a bike around 140 k's a week. On Tuesdays, I look after a 4-year-old and a 18-month-old grandchildren, and I'm about 5 mentally, running around and wrestling and doing all this stuff. But the reality is, I thought I was going to die, and people around me thought I was going to die last year. I collapsed at home and finished up in hospital. I've been through cancer recovery. So I guess that the signs of an indication of the age, I guess, is just some of the physical things that have been playing up a bit, but feeling good now. So it's that's probably the wake up call, and I guess I never see myself retiring. My wife uses, you retired 10 years ago. And I hate it. I say I didn't retire. I stopped paid work. And my take on it is I want to strive to continue to give back. I want to strive to continue to learn until the day I die.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
That sounds like a mission. Is that your mission now, or is that always been your mission, or is it deeper than that?
Certainly hasn't always been. I guess early on in married life, the mission was just making money. Like we were poor. And then the mission became climbing the corporate ladder. And then on the 10th of September 2013, my life changed. And the new mission is this giving back mission, this identifying and trying to live my best life mission. So it certainly hasn't always been this way. And I mean, at times it was totally appropriate to make money. you got to feed your family. We had our kids very close together for many years. Helen couldn't work, so it was just my role was to get food on the table, get them clothed. But now we're in a position. I mean, we're not wealthy, but I don't need to focus on that. I can do what I can do what I feel I'm called to do in my mission for this stage. Dare I say that? I don't want to say it, but the final stage of my life.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting aspect to bring out because, like as you said, you got very close to the concept of your own mortality recently with your illness, and if it's all right to chat about that, what does it feel like to suddenly have something so significant and so and so implacable hit you?
So I guess there's 3 different illnesses, and they were different. So there was the cancer diagnosis, and fortunate that there's a really good prognosis now. There's been around immunotherapy. There's been tremendous breakthroughs in that. So I felt pretty confident around that. There was another diagnosis around what they call pulmonary fibrosis, which is a progressive non-treatable lung disease. You basically just lose the ability to breathe. That upset me that it was just going to be this gradual decline, but it didn't feel right. I still don't believe it, and I've got a test coming up in a month's time. The third one that knocked me for 6 is when I collapsed at home, finished up in emergency at hospital, and just feeling absolutely awful. Managed to get out of hospital. We had a book launch to do for Kintsugi Heroes, and then I collapsed again. And again, and fortunately, that turned out to be almost certainly due to an antibiotic that I'd been put on that I had a reaction to. But I've got to say, I think I'm a bit of not a coward, but maybe lacking courage sometimes. But at that time, my faith, I was okay with dying. The process of dying, not too keen about.
Yeah.
But to actually die, this, don't get me wrong, there's so much more I want to achieve and do in my life. But yeah, it's like from a Christian point of view, it's a win-win. Yeah, so it's obviously going to happen. I'd love to get another 10 or 20 years because there's a lot of things that I want to do, but prepared to die so much I don't get a choice anyway.
Hey, maybe this could be the start of it. Like we're here, this could be dying on screen. Sometimes most podcasts, I feel like I'm dying. Right. It's an interesting response. Like the nature. So you had you grew up being active and energetic and maybe a little hyperactive at times, right? Your working life was characterized by getting in and moving all the time, and of course you're into you had sporting success and stayed active, extreme active, right, with all the biking and hiking and all the rest of it. In terms of the concept of stopping all that, why have you come to an accommodation? Why are you, okay with that when that's, not been your life? When you say, okay, we're not going to be doing any of this anymore, right? We're just moving on.
Well, maybe there's a selfish way of looking at that. And I struggle with some parts of the Bible, including the interpretation around heaven, things like that. We're getting quite spiritual here. But it's like it's the great place to be. It's utopia. So from a selfish point of view, it's almost like being in heaven is the best of the lot at a personal level.
Right.
From a non-selfish point of view, but what I feel I'm called to do, I just want to do a lot more. Like it's early days with the Kintsugi Heroes, but I'm incredibly excited about where that's heading. If possible, I'd like to see some great grandkids. But I'm going to need to be around for another 10 or 15 years to see that. Although the trend now is, of course, kids aren't having kids at all or having them later on. And so if my grandkids ever listen to this,
get on with it, guys.
After marriage, though. After marriage, find the right partner.
So, so legacy, right? Is that what what you're satisfied with when you're driven to make such effort and make such sacrifice to give back? What do you think's fueling that mission?
It's legacy, but it's not pride with legacy.
Right.
It's not, oh, look what I've done. It's not that at all.
Right.
It's the fact this is going to continue. The ripple effect will continue and keep growing. And when the new Ian, the new improved Ian comes and takes over the organisation, and I'd love that continue. And the same with mentoring men. There's huge potential with those. And I just, I mean, the thought of helping recreate the village, the thought of through storytelling, helping people with the challenges they're experiencing. I'm delighted to contemplate on that, not from a pride point of view, as I said, coming back to it's actually helping fulfill the purpose I've been given.
Yeah. So the idea that the world is a better place, is that truly what you're seeing, though, like as a consequence of your presence?
Yeah, I'd like to think that, John. I'd like to think that most interactions I have with people, they don't regret the interaction. And it's a powerful concept when those positive interactions happen when you're not doing anything at all. It's like our relationship here, John. You go out, you talk to a number of people, Kintsugi Heroes is just one of the vehicles that you use to meet these other people, and you have an impact on them, and then they'll go out and have an impact. So it's a powerful concept.
Yeah. Yeah, the power, the purpose of connection. I love that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You mentioned earlier with your grandkids that you join them in their age group, right? As a conversation, this is about the senior Australians and their journey, which is both challenge and triumph in many ways, right? Is that a group you can identify as well? Like, even if you are part of it temporarily, like, is it a group that you join, and how do you feel about that group?
So I do join that group. One of the things we've done through Connecting Seniors is set up this community choir.
Mm.
So I turn up there, and it's a real mixture of different situations. I could be deceiving myself. I feel like I'm the youngest member of the choir.
Yeah.
But there's people there with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, people with all sorts of different situations, and we sing along, and I enjoy that. But I see my role there is almost if I see someone on the road. So we do the singing, and then we have morning tea. And if I see someone on their own, I'll just want to go over and have a chat to them and support them. So I guess I'm seeing a role, not just I'm a participant.
Mm.
I feel like I want to build connection. I want to, what you said before, maybe like there's a guy sitting on his own last time, and he had a physical disability. I was chatting to someone. I said, "Oh, look, hold on. I've got to go and chat to someone." I went over and I just sat next to him and heard a bit of his story, and he brightened up, and I feel that's a role that for me. So it's, I don't know if I'm making that clear. Like there's just a participation. I'm here for me, or I'm here because I want to give back in some way based on my capabilities. Maybe down the track I'll be there just for me.
Yeah, well, interesting how you describe that, because you mentioned the word role a couple of times in that description, and we've actually had conversations about roles and how they define us in some ways. So the interesting almost division between who we are, our identity, and what role we play, right? You're like, where are you in that? You're walking into something, you participate. Do you enjoy it as Ian, and then also need a role to be a part, to feel like justified to be there? Or how do you see roles and who you are as a person?
Yeah. Well, up until very recently, if people asked, who are you? I would define myself by my roles. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a great-grandfather, I'm a friend, I'm a brother, whatever, a whole bunch of different things. And it occurred to me, like through mentoring men, where I learned a lot about what it's like to be, I call a life mentor.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a discussion, all of a sudden, Ian, you need to be quiet and put on your mentor hat.
Yeah.
And then continue with that. So with these different roles, sometimes I envisage putting on it, like with this person, the choir, it was okay. I'm now I'm just going to be it's going to be a friendly role. But it occurred to me, okay, that's not who Ian is. Ian's not someone who is all these different roles. Who is the genuine Ian? And it's evolved, and I hadn't really thought that much about it until recently. And maybe some people go through life never really knowing who they are. And I'm still not sure what I am. I one of the attributes is a set of values that I've got. And I guess I'm still working through that, but I tend to always come back, well, this is what I do. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I'm still trying to work out who I am. I'm someone with a lot of empathy. I'm someone who cares for others. I'm someone who I think is Christian values, but someone who also says the dumb things sometimes. Someone who still has inappropriate emotions sometimes. I mean, I'm don't want to sugarcoat. Sometimes I don't even like myself.
Mm.
So that's that's the real end.
That's real, mate. Real. It's interesting you say that. Do you think, as you talk about, the search? Well, I personally think, there are two things we seek in life fundamentally. That's safety and identity. Yeah. What do you think's important? Like, senior Australians have got to a point where they played many roles in their lives, right? So what do you think, as we, and I'm including myself in this, but as we get to, breach some of the sort of social barriers, like, age of 60, retirement, all that stuff, what do you think, becomes important for older Australians to know?
I think it's important to build connections. I was listening to Dr. Rob Gordon a couple of days ago, who's a clinical psychologist who was we met through the Alpine bushfires, and he talked about the importance of social capital. And when he talked about after a traumatic event, far more important than money and the infrastructure was his social capital. And to me, he was talking about natural disaster trauma, but the trauma could be a loss of a partner, or a loss of a physical capability, or whatever. So I think social capital is really important. That building those connections, and whether it's going to the community choir, or getting involved in different groups, volunteering. There's a huge lot of science around the benefit of volunteering. I would encourage around physical exercise. I would encourage around activities that maintain like mental acuity. So, and I love this intergenerational thing. I think there's a lot of things that older people can do that are in their best interest, and there's a lot of things that society could also be doing to facilitate that. And as I said at the start, it's an untapped resource. There's a great win-win-win here if we just understand it.
Mm. That's a huge and clear vision for older Australians to interact. What do you think in your life, with all of those roles you've played and all of that energy you put in? You talked about the stages, young, and your focus on providing for the family, and then later on, what did you learn that is essential to live a good older stage, to be in this
Yeah.
stage and do well?
Yeah, it's interesting. In my working career, I saw retirement, the traditional retirement, which is this self-centered, so not being critical, but self-centered. It's playing golf 3 times a week, or the grey nomads, or traveling around, or whatever. And I said, on the 10th of September 2013, my definition of that totally changed. And for me, the last 10 years has been easily the most fulfilling, enjoyable, purpose-filled time of my life, and learned a huge amount. I would encourage people around those sorts of things. It's just in giving back, in volunteering.
Hmm.
They'll get all these benefits that I talked about before.
What did you learn that you don't need as you walk into this stage?
The materialism that we can sometimes get sucked into. John, we've both got similar age cars. I think mine's 2007. I don't know what yours is.
2003.
The car still goes. So it's moving it away from the materialism. It's becoming more loving, less judgmental. There's huge freedom in that. Those sorts of things. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but yeah, now I've learned the things that we thought were important, and the reality is we were educated to think were important, or influenced to think were important, aren't really that important.
Yeah.
And the things that are important are these social connections, these relationships, these making the world a better place.
Yeah, beautiful. So you talked about how much energy in your younger days you spent into building providence, building material, security, we would call it, right? Community would call it. What do you now believe is your treasure?
My treasure is the knowledge that I've gained, understanding the impact of the things that are having on making the world a better place. The treasure is this family, and I'm absolutely blessed with 4 kids, 12 grandkids, that, to be honest, I probably didn't appreciate at different times, and I'm sure my kids would even say now, still not appreciating to the full degree. It's one of the challenges I've got, is this balance, and the balance is impossible between the things I feel called to do and family life, and it's one of the hardest things I've got with my current situation. But the treasure of my family, and the treasure of being married to Helen for 41 years, with challenges.
I often think you've got the treasure shines most brightly when it's well polished. So takes effort sometimes to keep the treasure shiny, which is interesting because, you talked about the first response was the things you've learned. What would you encourage other older Australians, and indeed what you're doing now, which is trying to help them find that in themselves? What would you encourage them to know about the knowledge they possess, or even their who they are, what about their identity?
Well, to know that they're valued, first off. They've got an important part to play in our society. There's so many gifts that they've got that they can give out to the community. And I would encourage them to start doing that. As I said, look for connection opportunities, look for ways they can give back, go and do things for other people. Yeah.
It's a great toolkit. And it's lovely to hear. I'm sure people would hear that and be encouraged. So what most encourages you? Like you've gone through some tough times physically, and of course, what you bite off, is you take a big bite of things and say, we're going to do this. It's not like, I'll just volunteer on Sundays. It's like, I'm going to create, game changing movements in Australia. So what do you find best keeps you going? Right. You mentioned faith and exercise. Are those the things you rely on? What else is there?
I think part of it, I'm incredibly competitive, and it could be good or bad. I don't know if that goes back to all the insecurity I had as a kid, and it was almost like needing to prove myself all the time. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'll put every effort into doing that. In fact, I was at a meeting this earlier on today, and I started writing a book a while ago, and I've now committed to have it done by my birthday in March next year.
Wow.
So if I'm still alive, there will be a book, at least a draft, a complete book.
Well, if you don't make it, I'll write your final chapter for you, mate.
So and it's this persistence. It's I talk about ready, fire, aim, which is sort of like describes how I approach things. And I meet a lot of people along the journey, and I find far more people in the ready, aim, ready, aim, ready. And I don't know if it's analysis paralysis or procrastination. They just struggle. That's at one extreme. The lesser extreme is fire. It's like it's no plan. And I guess I'm in that middle thing, and then that determination, persistence. And there's many stories through my life where that persistence, I just kept going and going and going, whether it be a physical activity or, I've run a number of different businesses and things like that. So I feel that's one of my strengths is just that persistence to keep going when maybe many others would stop.
Yeah. And what's the saying? I'd rather be persistent than good. Is that?
Yeah. Well, it's it's 5% talent and 95, whatever the percentage is.
Perspiration.
Yeah, 76% of statistics are wrong. So I don't know what the right figure is.
So, and speaking of like statistics in the sort of everyday world, is it all right if we, explore the power of faith in your persistence, right? How do you see faith as an everyday activity?
First, it's a struggle for me. There's people I meet in Christian circles who are constantly interacting with God in their faith. And in some ways, I'm jealous of those people. That's not where I'm at. The vast majority of the time, I'm in my own headspace doing the things that I feel need to be done. And it's important for me. For me, it's important to go to church because it helps get me centered, or to spend some time focused to help get me centered. Often, it's only when I look back that I can see a divine influence in the things that have happened to me. So, and the faith journey has evolved and is still evolving. I mentioned before, I'm a Christian, but I struggle with some aspects of the Bible. To me, it's things said that fail the pub test. But as Mark Twain said, it's not the things I don't understand about the Bible that concern me. It's the things I do. And I guess I come back to the Apostles' Creed, that core belief, and that I'm locked in on. The other stuff around the role of women in preaching and genocides and things like that, they're the things that I've got a lot of questions around it.
Yeah, and asking, I forget who said it, I think it's Stephen Covey, the quality of the questions we ask determines the quality of the lives we lead.
I think everyone should be carefully questioning things that are going on at the moment. One of the concerns I've got is this polarization that's going on, driven by social media. We've got this experiment that's never been done in history. We don't know how it's going to turn out around social media, but there's a lot of really negative signs that are going on. And I like this model where we've got a wire that almost goes to opposite points. Yes, no, black, white, whatever, right, wrong. But it never gets there. And then there's a bead on the wire. And as we have conversations like this, John, we might move that bead one way or another way. But some people are so locked in to either extreme that if you were to say to them, what information would you need to hear for you to change your position? A likely response could be, there's nothing you can say or nothing you can tell me that would change my position. And that's a very foolish attitude to have. And we're seeing that like in American politics at the moment. I'm just incredibly concerned and just gobsmacked by some of the things that are happening. I feel a bit distressed about it. I've been praying about that situation.
Yeah, wow. It's a great image. And thinking about that image, and as you say, the current world scenario seems to be very challenging as you look at it. And of course, we look at stats. Just out this week was the latest community tracker, that says, distress in the home and the family and individual young people's mental health is all going the wrong way on the statistics. And of course, we talk to a lot of people who have struggles and challenges, emotional challenges. So with all that going on, can we be positive? Is being an older Australian just a misery these days?
No, we can be positive, John. And I know that, look, there's so many factors in this. My background was IT. It's like, there's changes going all over the place, and how do you know the impact of what you're doing? I know you would know the starfish model, but can I just explain that?
Yeah,
and
please.
I'll relate that back.
Yeah, it's great.
And I may get this slightly different to your understanding, but there's a guy looking down on the beach. He sees someone walking along the beach and frequently bending down, picking something up and throwing it into the water. And as he gets closer to the beach, you can see the beach is just littered with thousands and thousands of starfish. And this person he goes over to the person picking them up. What are you doing? He said, well, they're out in the sun. They're going to die unless they get back into the water. And the guy said to him, but the beach has got thousands and thousands. What possible difference can you make? And he looked at the one in his hand. He said, well, it's making a difference to this one. And he threw it back in. So there's all these trends, like you said, that are going the wrong way. The lack of young guys without a positive moral, all this negative stuff. But what I can hand on my heart say, John, and we've seen this through the podcast, through the storytelling, through the responses we're getting, we are making a difference. People who are sharing their story, talk about the therapeutic benefit. They're actually sharing it with someone who listens to them and hears them. And it's incredibly empowering. And the people who are picking up these stories, often people think, well, I'm the only one who feels this way. No one knows what I've gone through. But then they hear this story and it resonates with them, and it encourages them to reach out, maybe talk to someone else. So the trend could keep going down, but we're one of the players in that who's doing our bit to improve the world that we live in. And hopefully that impact will get bigger and bigger. So I would come back and encourage other people, get involved in something like this. Find whatever it is. Find your Kintsugi heroes, find your mentoring them, whatever that thing is for you, and then give it a crack and make a difference. It's worthwhile just for one starfish.
Absolutely. I love that. And, it's really a call to arms that you've just issued. So, and I find talking to the people we have on the podcast just so interesting, so inspiring, and they're still plugging away. They haven't, like you, they haven't decided that it's, that, they can't change things. What do you think it would look like if, ultimately, persistence is, if we keep plugging away, we'll make a difference. What's the world look like in your mind, right, when we do make that difference?
Okay, I've got great question. I've got two big dreams around this. The first dream is that every week in every community, a group of people get together, maybe with a facilitator like you, John, and over a cup of tea or whatever, the stories are shared. People get listened to, they get encouraged, that connection, that social capital builds, and it goes every week. And then the love that behind the scenes with all that. And the second dream is that someone going through some sort of life challenge can readily find a resource, either whether it be a podcast or a radio broadcast or a book or a workshop or one of those events I just talked about, where they connect with the storyteller, where the story resonates to their situation, and it gives them some hope and some inspiration. And that's where I would love to see this happen. I can say probably confidently it won't happen in my lifetime, but it's starting to happen, and I would love to see that grow. What a beautiful world that would be. When I grew up, it was a village. Like, we were poor. We never had a telephone. Actually, never had a fridge. But Mrs. Ryan, 3 houses down, had a telephone. So we would give her number. Then she would come up and say, "Oh, there's a phone call for you," and we'd go down there and do that.
Wow.
We go and get our eggs from this Mrs. House down on the corner. We knew the neighbours, and we, as kids, who always be out in the street playing cricket or football or a bit more risky shanghais and slingshots and doing stuff with crackers and doing stuff we shouldn't do. But there was that village, that community, and unfortunately we've lost that. My journey after the 10th of September 2013 started as being a youth mentor through the RAISE program in high schools. And I mentored a lot of schools and a lot of kids. And virtually every one of the young guys I mentored came from a broken family. There was no male role model. And it's a terrible situation. And that's another one of the trends, the negative trends that's happening. So, let's do something about that.
Great call to action again, but reasons for encouragement, right, to go. Speaking of which, right, what makes you laugh?
I think I've got a GSOH, which is a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
My grandkids make me laugh. Granddad, you got a hole in your hair, as one of them said, and the games I play with them, the hide and seek, and my son is hilarious. My son Matthew is just so funny. In fact, people have said to me, "We thought you were funny, Ian, but Matthew leaves you for dead." For me, it's a part of who I am, and I mean, this has been a serious conversation, but so many things make me laugh.
I don't think it's mutually exclusive to be serious and to laugh, right? But which obviously leads me to the question: what makes you cry?
Some of the stories that we've shared make me cry, and I'm really happy with that. It's not like, oh, I'm crying. I get emotional thinking about that. Like there was the story around the floods and Leaf Moonan's story, Mick McArdle. And sometimes it's just happiness. I meditate on the grandkids. Like my brain is often spinning. One of my daughters said, "Dad, you're on the spectrum," and I think she's right. So the brain, I've got to force myself, whether it be faith or to get into the space where I meditate on these things. But I can get emotional with that. I have a lot of empathy, which can be good, can be not good. But even over films, sometimes I get emotional. So, yeah. But I'm in the old days, I would have seen that as being a big weakness, and the old confusion over macho, what a real man is. I shared that as a kid, my dad would take me and my brothers and some of his mates and guys, and we'd go camping. And it was all about guns and shooting things. I remember one of my dad's mates would lie on his back with a 303 powerful rifle, try and shoot wedge-tailed eagles out of the sky, and they would shoot stuff. And I just hated it. I did, and they would go spotlighting, and I'd stay back in the tent, questioning what sort of man was I. I didn't want to go kill things. And now I'm totally happy with that. I used to think it was a weakness, but now I think, good on your end. I mean, I'm not bagging people who want to go out and shoot vermin. That's what they're into. But I questioned just around that. I became a vegetarian for a stage of my life because I thought, well, I'm being hypocritical. So, again, totally fine with that. But I'll probably have a steak later on today.
I'm glad you're cured. Well, I find it interesting that on a question of making you cry, you got to vegetarianism. But anyway, let's put it out there that we have nothing against any nutritional lifestyle choices people make. But so that brings me to the point about what do you think when you look at your life and the life of the people you connect with and your community? What in older Australians that, is there a role model, or is there someone's inspired you, or a story that's caught you and that you really, has filled you full of positivity for older Australians?
There's been so many, but the one woman who had the biggest influence on my life, she actually turned up at our church. Someone told her I was an IT expert, which is totally wrong. she soon worked out that was the case. And she was writing this book aimed at highlighting reducing sexual abuse within churches.
Wow.
And I ended up, and she saved, and somehow she'd lost the book. I forget what it was. But anyway, I ended up editing it, and Helen and I actually funded the book to be published. But that established this relationship with this woman. She became a mentor to me. She was a professor of theology. And I would meet with her every week. I'd make out an agenda, and she built such self-belief in myself. She saw things in myself that I didn't see.
Wow.
And it's just incredibly powerful, influential relationship. And she taught me a lot about empathy as well. And just a beautiful relationship. She died. She got a brain tumor and died. And I was really distraught, upset. I went to a funeral thinking, and I was going to talk because I want to share what this woman had done for me. The funeral was packed. There would have been another 50 Ians with stories about what this woman had done. And it was just amazing. And she was a leader. One of the stories that was shared, there was she used to speak at conferences, and she was in the Anglican church, and she's speaking at this big conference one day, and she put two Vitamizers or mixed masters on stage, and she said, "What's the difference between these?" And then she answered the question. She said, "There's no difference; they're identical." And then she put a woman's wig on one of them. And she said, "Oh, now this one's not as good as the other one." And stories like that. But I actually, this is going to sound corny. I wrote to her once 20 things I love about Marlene. Her name was Marlene, and she responded back, and so that was a bit of vulnerability. I mean, how could you write that? How can a man write 20 things I like about you to someone? But that belief. So yeah, huge influence on my life.
So with that amazing inspiration from a wonderful older Australian, right? Which is, her legacy obviously came out when you were talking about it. It sounded, there were an image of mentoring men came to mind. You created a model where other men like that could be put in contact and support, just people in, blokes in need in the community. And her, the ripple effect of her being involved in your life is that, other men are supporting blokes all over the country. So yeah, such legacy, such power.
Well, one of the things she got me to do, because I struggled in a relationship with my dad for a long time, and she got me to do an exercise. I forgot the question I was asked, but I went away and wrote about my dad and the experience and how we related. And then all of a sudden, there was some hard stuff that went on, and stuff, I didn't think I thought he did the wrong thing. But my dad was in World War II. I think a quarter of his squadron killed. There was no recognition of post-traumatic stress back then. And it's not an excuse for wrong behavior, but when you start to understand potential causes, as a society, we focus so strongly on symptoms. But when we go back and then maybe understand what could be behind that, to me, it makes us a lot more forgiving and understanding. And there's a powerful lesson in that. So the old Ian, pre-Kintsugi Heroes Ian, pre-mentoring men Ian, was far more judgmental. The new Ian is, poor thing. What has gone on to create that sort of situation in you? And I think that sort of attitude could also help in the seniors environment both ways. Seniors to the community, and community back to the seniors.
Beautiful. I love that. Like you're talking about a new Ian, right? But we're all entering that sort of older Australian stage, right? Which is, and I think the power of transformation. It's not determined by your age. You can actually take all of those lessons, energy, and understanding the wisdom of being a certain age, and you can put it to good use. I love that message, right? So.
Well, I didn't start mentoring then till 2018, so I was 64.
Wow.
And Kintsugi Heroes started in 2022, so I was 68. Yeah. I thought of a title for this podcast, John. Finishing Well. Finishing Well.
Finishing Well. That's a ripper. Absolute ripper. I love it. And of course, finishing well is important in a podcast, in the arc of it as well. So I think it's really timely you came up with, because I've been pondering what is a great last question to ask, right? And I figure, something affirming, something appreciative of the great conversation, right? And I think as we come to the end of our chat, which has been amazing, but I figured I might, have to go back to the quirkiness that the goods, the GSOH, right? So I would say, as an old Australian, with all of this power of living, which is your superpowers of wisdom and learning, what would you recommend people do, like when the zombie apocalypse hits? What would be important for us to respond, how to respond to the zombie apocalypse?
Wow, never been asked that before. It's interesting when things like in World War II, the level of connection and the support for one another just went up. Suicide rates went way down.
Yeah.
And it went from, the Germans came and bombed us last week to, Mrs. Brown's got this new recipe for this that doesn't need these products that you haven't got available. So I would talk about that. Let's as a community, let's get together. Let's see how we can handle this. Let's work out the roles and the responsibilities, and what people need and support, all that sort of stuff. Now, you said GSOH. Can I leave you with just one of a number of stories? So we met some friends in America, in Montana, and they're driving us around all these old sites, these old Western sites, Wild Bill Hickok was over here or whatever. Anyway, we arrive in this town. We're walking down on the wooden sidewalks, and someone was hung there. He got shot here, and we finish up in this little a restaurant type thing, saloon, and it's one of the oldest saloons there. And on the board, they've got the menu, and on the menu was Cornish pasties. And I said to the waitress when she came to take the order, "Now, what are your Cornish pasties like?" And she said, "Oh yeah, they're good." So I ordered one of them, and then when she came back after the meal to collect the plate, and this is my terrible attempt at American accent. "Well, what did you think about Cornish pasties?" I said, "Oh, they're just like my mum used to make." "Wow, that is so nice of you to say that." I said, "Not really. My mum was a terrible cook." And the whole restaurant, because they've listened to this conversation, for some reason, Americans love hearing Australian accents. Everyone cracked up. It's just, so it's that sort of that humour that and builds connection as well. It's important.
So I that's great. I can see you telling that joke to the zombies as they charge over, and of course they'd all drop dead. Hearing the dad joke would have the desired impact to free the community. So, thank you, Ian. Thank you for the chat today, and of course, thank you for your service to your community. Thank you for you deciding, to keep going. When times got tough, your persistence, and your legacy. And thank you for being a terrific role model as an older Australian for us guys, moving into that category, as slowly and as painfully as we can manage. So,
John, thank you so much for the opportunity to share it. I love the work you're doing. And on behalf of Kintsugi Heroes, thank you for what you do.
Mate, thank you. Well, that's another Kintsugi Heroes podcast in the bank. So, again, mate, thank you very much, and good luck getting old. Cheers.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Connecting Seniors, a Kintsugi Heroes special series. Thank you to Colin Lilly for permission to use Broken as our theme music for this series. If you enjoyed this conversation, share the podcast with a friend and let us know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support Kintsugi Heroes and the stories we share, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au and follow the instructions to make a tax-deductible donation. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.